Now it's time for another Board Game Brawl preview with Nick Meanahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Flick Wars from Breaking Games and Print and Play Productions. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page. You can do so by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you to the page. You can find out more information and hopefully consider backing the project. Flick Wars is a dexterity game for 2 to 6 players where you are literally flipping discs on the table. Now, in gameplay thematic terms, this is actually referring to these high-tech sci-fi units that you and your other galactic factions are using against each other to take over a planet and get a precious resource. You take out enemy units by getting within their range and then going in for the kill with yet another flick. But of course, it's not quite that simple. Every unit has different special abilities. Some have multiple flicks they're able to utilize, and there's always the terrain of the planet itself that you have to contend with. So let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype version of the game. So do bear in mind that what you see here in this version of the game is going to change in the final version. The playmat in particular will look different. But other than that, let's go ahead and take a look, and then we're going to come back. We'll discuss it further.
Flick Wars is a competitive dexterity game for 2 to 6 players. Each player is a rival galactic faction trying to dominate a planet. You'll do this with high-tech military units that you will literally be flicking across the battlefield with your fingers. The goal is to knock out the opposing faction's units. We'll focus on a 2-player game, but with more players you'll either play on teams or do a free-for-all. First, I'll mention that range in this game is always measured using the range rulers, with increments of 1, 2, and 3. Lay out the battlefield mat and have each player select a faction. Each player will then take turns laying out pieces of terrain such that they're not within 2 range increments of each other or of the player bases. Terrain can go above or below the playmat, creating bumps and ridges to avoid or surpass. Technically, any small household object can be used for terrain purposes. Each player takes their faction base card, folds it, and slides it under the playmat on the long edge, at least 2 range away from the short edges. You'll also get a rules reminder card, unit cards, and a set of unit tokens that correspond to those cards, 2 for each. You'll start with basic units but can use more advanced units later. Finally, take Unium gems totaling 30 and immediately spend some of them to deploy 2 units to the field, within 2 range of your base. Let's look at the unit cards. Each unit is either an infantry, tank, or air class. Each has 3 stats, including a cost to deploy, a number of flicks you get per activation with that unit, and an attack range that determines what range you need to be in order to make an attack flick against an opponent's unit. They will also have special abilities that are either activated when flicking, or a reaction to an opponent's flick, or are just always on. Choose a player to go first, then go clockwise. On your turn, you either issue command actions or activation actions, but not both. On the command turn, you can take up to 2 command actions, including the same action twice. You can either make a move flick with a unit or deploy a new unit. To move, simply pick a unit and flick it to wherever you want to go. It's okay if you hit other units or scenery. If they move, they stay where they are, but no one gets killed. If, however, you hit an enemy base, your unit immediately dies. To deploy a new unit, simply pay the cost and place it like you did at the start of the game. For an activation turn, pick 1 unit to activate, and you can use the flick score of that unit to potentially do more than 1 flick. Declare ahead of time whether it will be a move or attack flick. If moving, it follows the same rules as a command flick, but certain units may have more flicks available, which means you might be able to move twice or move and attack in the same turn. For an attack flick, pick a target that is within that unit's attack range and make a flick. If you physically hit the target, they are destroyed and flipped upside down in the play area. They are now debris, acting as an obstacle and can never be brought back. And for the record, if a move flick sends a unit off the battlefield, the opponent places the unit back on the battlefield near the edge that it fell off. If a unit who was hit in an attack gets knocked off the battlefield, or if terrain pieces get knocked off, they stay off, destroyed. Keep going until only 1 player has any units remaining. That is Flick Wars.
Well, there probably aren't enough dexterity games out there, or at least not enough dexterity games for, I hate to say it like this, sounds high and mighty, but for serious board gamers. And I don't mean that in a negative context. What I mean is just, there's a lot of dexterity games, especially kids games, that are just drop a thing, hit a thing, push a thing, flick a thing, and then just see where it goes, and it's all just really, really goofy fun. And this can be goofy fun too, but the fact that is strategy here, and you have to deploy units, and you have to choose which units to deploy, and how best to use your special abilities, and set yourself up tactically by moving your unit around the map. You just happen to do it by flicking it. You know, that's the dexterity part of the game. So the fact that it has these different elements to it, you know, it elevates it above those other games only in the sense that it is more strategic. And I think that that's something that is perhaps a niche that's not being serviced fully within the broader modern board gaming category, if I could sound highfalutin, which I don't mean to be. But that's essentially what Flick Wars brings. You can have the idea of a dexterity game and the tactile skill that you need in order to succeed at that, with the type of tactical, you know, miniatures-based, essentially, combat that you may be used to. And it's all handled in a very streamlined fashion. This is a game that you can get up and running very quickly. It plays very quickly, even if you're playing with multiple players. And but even within that context, you have options. You can choose which unit cards to use in a particular game. You'll start off with the basic ones, and you can move on to more advanced ones when you get familiar with the game. If you're playing with multiple players, you have different options. You have team mode, you have free-for-all mode, where you have a single opponent you're trying to take out above all else before moving on to someone else. So there is, as simple as it can be to set up and learn, there's layers, and there's things that you can do to make it as a complex an experience as you want it to be. And turns go very quickly in the game. It's basically, am I moving into position on this turn, or am I going to be going in for the kill? It sounds easy to do that, but it, again, requires both tactics and tactile functioning in order to get yourself into a position where you can even go in for the kill. And even then, it's not a guaranteed thing. Usually if you're within range, you're going to be able to take out that unit. Might not happen. There might be misfortune befalling you. And remember that every unit has its own different special abilities. Some don't, but they have some other overwhelming power, like the maybe number of flicks, to make up for it. Some have really interesting abilities that are going to keep them alive longer or make them easier to kill your units. So you'll have to take all these different things into account. It's not just simple and straightforward. It's just easy and streamlined, if that makes sense. So if you like any of these things, if you like dexterity games but you want a little more meat to it, if you like tactical sort of top-down miniature strategy games, but maybe you don't like the overall complexity of those or the time it takes to set up or building miniatures, you might want to take a look at Flick Wars. It's a game that you can bring out just very quickly, and it's a game and set up quickly and learn easily, and get done in a very small amount of time, but still feel like you've played a meatier game. Anyways, it's on Kickstarter right now, so if any of those things appeal to you, check it out. You can follow the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Don't take my word for underneath this video, singular. Don't take my word for it. Go there, find out for yourself, and hopefully consider backing the project. That is Flick Wars. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting our sponsors. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.